Hello, I'm Eric Hanley, an automation specialist with ES&E, and in this video segment we will cover new project creation, navigation, and some basic ladder logic using CCW software. Let's start in CCW by showing you two things that are really beneficial when you are programming. The first thing is CCW by default limits your tag names to 25 characters long. If you exceed the 25 characters, then it will only show you the beginning and the end of your tag name. It will truncate the center of the tag name with multiple asterisks. So if you have important information in the center, you're going to fix that by going to Tools, Options, IEC Languages, then Ladder Diagram. That brings up all the properties for the ladder diagram editor. We're going to scroll to cell width, which is set to 25 by default. I would suggest increasing that to 30 or 35. That's going to allow you to read larger tag names within your code. The second thing that is really important is the CCW theme, which starts out as default. One of the vast improvements they've made to the ladder editor in CCW to make it look more like a Logix product. In 500 or 5000 Logic Designer, they gave you the instruction set across the top that is grouped in folders. They also changed the instruction name to match the Logix software. So remember to change the theme to Logix if you are used to programming with Logix software. Now we will get into creating a CCW project and adding a device to the project. We will select New at the startup page, leave the name as default, and then hit Create. As you can see, there are several different types of devices that you can select from if you're going to create a project. But what we're interested in is the Micro800, and specifically, if you'll notice, there is a simulator version, which is what we are going to select. We are going to start with the simulator to show you how that works. The simulator is wonderful when you don't have any hardware. With the simulator, you can download the software, install it, write logic, and test that logic without having any hardware. If you are going to eventually use a real micro PLC, it's not a big deal to start with the Micro800 simulator. Once you're all done simulating all of your code, you can go ahead and change the part number to the correct number, and it will make a new project for you with the proper hardware. Now let's hit select and then hit add project button on the bottom. That will create the project and launch the home page for the Micro800. The home page is an overview with settings, and it is also where you go to upload and download your program. Let's go ahead and select programs in the project organizer. Right click and add new ladder diagram. By default, it's labeled prog1, but we can go ahead and rename it. So instead of prog1, we're going to name it main. CCW has a simpler structure compared to 5000, which has tasks, programs, and routines. Instead, you've got the main program folder, and then you've got the programs underneath that. You can mix and match editors, so you can add a function block version of a program or a structured text version. We will quickly add a second ladder diagram and call it auto mode. Next, we will go into our main program and get started writing a little code. You can now see the ladder editor, which has had some big improvements to resemble the Rockwell Logix software. There are the instruction folders along the top, and since we are in the Logix themes, the instructions look very much like any of the Logix software that you would have potentially used in the past. Let's build a very simple self-latching motor starter type circuit. We'll just grab an instruction from the top and drag it onto the rung. That will automatically bring up the variable selector. The variable selector has global variables, local variables, system variables, which are a lot like internal tags, and then you have the actual inputs and outputs. We're going to be using the simulator, which allows me to manipulate inputs and based on the code, change an output. So I'm actually going to use the inputs here for our circuit. The syntax in CCW is a little bit different than in Logix. It starts with I/O, then EM for embedded, then DO for digital outputs or DI for digital inputs, followed by the point number. So I'm going to give it an alias name, and we're going to use start push button. and then I can give it a comment on the right. By default, the comment does not show up in the ladder diagram. Only the tag and alias names do. Now, to select that tag, you have to come over to the left-hand column and select the proper row. Now that we have selected our first tag address for the Start push button, we're going to go ahead and continue with our motor circuit. Let's add a Stop button using an indirect contact or Examine if open instruction, and then use the next available I/O point with Stop push button as the alias. Now we have a Stop push button, so we need to drag a coil instruction down and assign it to digital output 0 and alias that for motor starter 01. So now we go back to the beginning of the rung where we need to add a branch. We'll drag that down, and a cautionary word about branches. If you don't drop the branch in the correct place on the rung, it is very difficult to reposition the branch, so it is much easier to delete it and then place a new branch in the correct location. Last, we will add the latching circuit portion on the new branch. It did not go in the correct place, so we'll drag it, or you can do a copy paste. Also, notice that there's a yellow caution sign that indicates that this is not completed or there is a problem with the syntax. Obviously, the problem is here we don't have a variable or tag name listed. Once we fix that, we would have completed our first rung. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please contact your local ES&E account manager or automation specialist.